It's okay, I can
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Governance and Priorities meeting for Tuesday, November 26th. I'd like to call this meeting to order and start with our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we honor and acknowledge the Mokitas and the traditional Seven Territory and the oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Lethal Nakota Nations, Chiniki, Bearspaw, Goodstoney, and Tsuut'ina Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Otipisa Métis government of the Métis Nation with Alberta District 4. Finally, we acknowledge all nations, Indigenous, non, who live, work, and play on this land and who honor and celebrate this territory. This sacred gathering place provides us with an opportunity to engage in and demonstrate leadership on reconciliation, and we are honored to have you join us on Treaty 7 territory. Moving on to our updates and approval of the agenda, can I have a councillor make a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Randhawa.
Good morning, everyone. I move that the committee approved the November 26, 2024 Governments and Priority Committee meeting as presented.
Comments, questions? Call for the vote. Great, and that's carried. Thank you. For our public input session, I believe we have received one letter of correspondence, and just a reminder for everybody that with our public input sessions at our regular meeting of council, what we do is it's something that is on that agenda, whereas the other ones are for a more general concern, and we have received a more general concern that I would like to turn over to Ledge Services.
Good afternoon.
Or morning.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Sorry. Through the chair to all of Meer and Council, we just got a letter over the weekend from Brittany Galmester, just having a concern about pets in residential suites. So I'll just read it to Meer and Council now. Hello, I am looking to start the process of a petition that prevents rental properties, all rental properties privately owned or owned by a property management company, from not renting to families with pets. This is criminal. Not only is Chestermere an absolute nightmare right now, with the insane increase to population with no new schools, rent gauging is through the roof with all the properties owned by people in other provinces, and now they are advertising rentals that are strictly no pets. What are families supposed to do with their animals? This is not only unfair, it's unrealistic to expect people to rehome their beloved animals, which are viewed as family members. If this is not appropriate avenue to start this petition, please let me know so I can take it elsewhere. Thank you so much and have a lovely day. Brittany Ford.
Thank you very much. On concerns with this, I'm not sure that this is a concern that council can handle, but I would like to put back to administration to see if we can communicate with this resident with regards to if there's anything that we can do with this, but I do not believe that this is an issue for council to deal with.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with you.
Okay, so thank you. So we want to say thank you for this, and so through Ledge Services, we can have that communicated back through our administration for some kind of a follow-up to see what can happen. Moving on to our reports for information, our first one we have is item 5.1, which is our election bylaw, addition of Bill 20 amendments, CRC criminal record check, and this is presented by Vanessa, our interim manager of Ledge Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We actually need to go back and you have to make a motion to accept the public input for information, please.
Thank you. My bad. Can I have a councillor make the following motion, please? Deputy Mayor Narayan.
So move that committee accept the letter of concern regarding rental discrimination against pets from a Chestermere resident for information.
Comments, questions? Councillor Sandboe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to flag something. One of the comments in here saying properties owned by people in other provinces, because that's not what this resident is giving feedback about, but it does tie into something else we've been discussing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Warzanowski.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Dean. The only comment I have through you is to administration. As you look into us, just look up if there's any laws also preventing or supporting having the option to have pets in rental properties or otherwise. Before we get back to them, maybe there's some legal reasons why you can't happen, why people have the option or not to have pets as part of rental properties. Just check it out.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll call for the vote. Great, thank you. Now we're moving on to item 5.1, as mentioned a moment ago.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to discuss regarding the Bill 20 election bylaw review with a criminal record check. So, as per some of the discussions I've been having with Mayor and Council, that my recommendation to Council would be that the committee discuss the need for a new election bylaw that integrates the requirements of Bill 20, including the option to make criminal record checks, CRC, mandatory for all election candidates. If the committee supports this initiative, direct administration to draft and bring a new bylaw for review at a council meeting in December of 2024. Some of the subject background would be with the recent legislation updates of Bill 20, the City of Chestermere has the opportunity to develop a comprehensive new election bylaw, which that includes the candidate criminal record check. This addition aims to ensure transparency, promote public confidence, and align with provincial legislation changes. The implications of it financially would be administrative costs associated with processing the CRC may arise, administrative adjustments to candidate nomination process to incorporate the CRC submissions, and the compliance with Bill 20 enhanced standards for candidate eligibility. The risk is implementing the CRC requirements could discourage some candidates, but would likely strengthen public trust in the election process. As all of Council has, is the Bill 20 information, as well as our previous bylaws for bylaw 004-21, the voter identification bylaw, and bylaw 011-21, the municipal election bylaw. So at this time, again, recommended options are that the committee direct administration to draft a new election bylaw that integrates requirements from Bill 20, including the option to make criminal record checks, CRCs, mandatory for all election candidates for council's review in December of 2024. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are you also looking for feedback as to what council may be looking for within the overall within the overall bylaw for this? Are you looking for those comments as well? Great, thank you. So we'll open it up to council for comments on things that they may be looking for within the new bylaw. Councillor Sandboe?
Thank you, Your Worship, and my comments through you. One item that this council has previously identified is signage around election time. That needs a very thorough review. I'm not sure whether this is the best idea, but I would go as far as to suggest that we should drastically reduce the allowances for signs during elections. Everybody in the community absolutely hates them, and it's worth a really thorough review.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Warzanowski.
I do have some other commentary, but thank you, Mayor Dean. I'd like to just add on to Councillor Sandboe's comment about signage. I did get some feedback from residents who have experience with elections in other jurisdictions, and one of the suggestions that they had, I would ask through the chair that Legislative Services considers for as we draft up this new bylaw is designated areas for signage such that they're not all over the place. And then that way, residents who are driving by know if they want to look at signs, they're only in designated areas as outlined by the city. And if I may, through the chair, just make one comment. I see that this is a proposal to council in regards to updating the bylaw for criminal record checks. However, we would hope that it's not just criminal record checks. Signage has been mentioned, and I'm sure there's a long list of suggestions that we'd want to amend to the bylaw that I would, as a councillor, like to see updated as we do first, second, and third reading of this bylaw.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wozinowski. Just to be clear, that's exactly what we're doing. So we are redoing the entire bylaw. What we have to do is, if we want to include criminal record checks, according to Bill 20, that all has to be done before the end of December. And so what is being proposed is exactly that. And as Ms. Vanderveer pointed out in her presentation, that bylaw is going to be coming back to us, I believe, on December 3rd is when this bylaw is going to be coming, and it's going to be a comprehensive review. Like, it is not just including CRCs. That's why we're having the commentary right now about what other changes you would like to see within that bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Dean. The comment I would have then is, what else has a deadline of the end of the year if we need to update it? Because it sounds like our election bylaw is going to be more comprehensive than just including a criminal record check by the end of the year.
Nothing else is due. So Bill 20, the only thing that Bill 20 dictated for the elections bylaw was for the criminal record check.
Okay,
the criminal,
thank you.
you have to make that clear to candidates because the election period starts on January 1st, 2025. And so Bill 20 dictated that you have to have this done. And it has to be done the year before the election.
Thank you.
Any other things that people would like to see? Councillor Schindler.
I guess if we're going on the signage train here, I really like the ideas posted or put forward just a moment ago, but I would also add in there are other countries that do significant signage prohibition on, like, the day before elections, where the day before the actual final election voting day, signage has to be removed. And that sort of creates, I guess, an equality to everybody who's voting. You have to sort of know who you're voting for. You can't just drive by a sign and see. I guess I'm not entirely sure how they do it, but it's interesting. But we should also look at in strengthening our bylaws so that signage rules can be enforced going forward. They're not really enforced in our last election, so yeah, that's what I got for that.
Yes, thank you. I would also like to see anywhere where, as we're doing this work, getting ready for next week, I would like to see in 2 weeks, I would also like to see us do a review of, if we're making a change here, what other bylaw will have to be updated. So I believe that currently signage is outlined within our land use bylaw as well. And so we would have to make some updates within our land use bylaw as well. So one of the things that I would like to see is that cross-referencing so that we are doing the proper updates kind of across the board. I know that all can happen at once. And just a reminder for all of us on process that we will do a first reading that's going to have some proposals for us, and we can give some further proposals back before moving to second and third. So we're going to have a chance to do a full review of the suggestions that are coming back. And again, the deadline we're concerned about is the feeling from administration is that there is a desire for us to see criminal record checks added to part of the candidacy process. So we just have to have that part added. Then we can make changes again after that. But we have to have the criminal record checks in a bylaw before the end of December if we wish for this to be part of the 2025 election cycle. Deputy Mayor Narayan.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Vanessa. So when bringing back the report, if you can also provide further clarity whether, when it comes to criminal record check, is it for convictions for both summary and indictable offences, or just the indictable offences?
I'm not positive on that answer, but the election bylaw actually has gone to our legal team, and they're actually writing it, not administration so that it is correct and is following all the legislation and requirements.
It's wonderful.
Deputy Mayor Ryan, what normally shows up on a criminal record check?
So anything and all convictions. However, summary convictions are considered not so serious offences. So these are punishable by $2,000 max or 6 months in prison. Indictable offences are essentially all your serious offences. However, in law, there's a clear delineation between the two types of convictions, and for many things, generally it's the indictable offences that are considered. I don't know how deep the legislation has got into looking into this, whether it's any conviction at all or certain types of conviction. For example, shoplifting, which should be theft under maybe $5,000. That's a conviction. That's a criminal conviction, right? So there's that makes somebody ineligible to apply to run. So just maybe further clarity on that would be wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do have clarity on that. We were given a pretty extensive review of this at the one conference I was at, and that if you have a conviction on your criminal record check, it does not make you ineligible to run. There are only certain ones, and I apologize, I can't recall, and perhaps this can come back when we do the bylaw review. But just because you have something on your CRC, it does not make you ineligible to run. There are actually very, very few convictions that would make you ineligible to run. The purpose that according to my understanding from what the provincial government has presented, including from municipal affairs, is that the idea behind this is for a more transparent review of all candidates. Also, these are not made public just by automatically, so to speak. So what would happen is, just like everything else with an elections package, somebody would have to come in to do a review of that candidate, is how that works. So similar to what happens right now. So for example, we all know the process that we all go and we get signatures, for example, right? Anybody at any time during the election process can come in and see the people who have signed. So for councillor it's 20, for mayor it's 50. Somebody can come in. This CRCs would be a part of that process. CRCs are the only thing also that are not going to be necessarily where your private information is going to be protected, similar to the other changes that they made in the Elections Act. So other changes that they made, for example, was that your address cannot be made public, and the address of your campaign manager cannot be made public, those sorts of things. However, what is included in your CRC, except for your address, is not protected. So somebody can come in and see it. That's the difference.
Just to follow up, and thanks for the clarity. With respect to the address, is that the address only for the candidate that cannot be revealed, or is that for anyone that signs the nomination?
Through the mayor to Councillor Narayan, that's any addresses. So you can't have your personal information, same with your personal phone number, that type of thing. If you can't find it on Google, you can't put it in. It's kind of like the theory to do it with.
And that's a change that's come with Bill 20. Councillor Schindler.
Yeah, my questions were along the same lines of who do we put in the bylaw who becomes the arbiter of who gets to run or not, and the severity of those instances. And then I also was understanding that that may not actually, what you said about them, the record checks not being disclosed to the public, it may actually not be true, and that they will become public record. I would just like to ensure that, or find some clarity in that, if it possible.
To Mayor and to councillors and Councillor Schindler, at this time I'm not sure on that answer, but I can bring that back to you on December 3rd with a little more clarification on that. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Worzanowski.
Thank you, Mayor Dean. One question through you, administration, and to you, Mrs. Vandermeer, is that if we're going to have 3 readings and get this approved, will we have enough time to have another review to any other the election bylaw before it's functionally required, before people start actually campaigning and running in the next election? Because there's a lot of good ideas up here. I would expect that we probably formalize some of the other changes after we push through the criminal record check into this bylaw.
So through the mayor to Councillor Worzanowski, yes, so December 3rd would be first reading, so then you guys can give your input on your changes that you want to see if there is any needed, and then second and third reading would be brought back to the 17th meeting of December.
Thank you. My question was more surrounding, I believe in the MGA or maybe in our procedural bylaw, we need 6 months before we do a review of a subsequent change. If we do any subsequent changes that are over and above the criminal record check, will we have enough time for anybody running next year to see the revision to that bylaw before they start to run with regards to signs or any other matters?
So the election bylaw is a brand new bylaw that we're bringing forward. So the old bylaws will be rescinded. So it'll be a brand new bylaw. So if you need to make changes within that bylaw at the time, that's why we're bringing it December 3rd, so that changes can be made for further in 2 weeks. It doesn't apply to your previous bylaws because you won't be using them at all. They'll be rescinded. Does that make sense?
Almost.
Okay.
So then you're suggesting that if we do want to make any other changes other than the criminal record check, given the time to make another revision to the bylaw in the future, such as signage, non-criminal record check related, we should do it now. Okay. Then I would suggest that we get everything on the table so you have all the information we need to draft up that bylaw.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Fluker.
Just wanted to add a little bit of information. Mayor and Council and Councillor Schindler in particular, his question about criminal records. If you've convicted of a criminal offense, it is a matter of public record and available for anyone to see. So you can't, if you've been convicted, you can't hide the fact.
Okay. So with that, I believe right now you are looking for a motion for us to... That's what we're doing. Councillor Sandboe.
Can I make a comment first, Your Worship?
Absolutely.
Is that all right? I was also just remembering some other conversations. I'm not sure whether the bylaw itself is the best place for it, but sometimes there's a bit of a gap in closing the loop with communications in the different processes with candidates, with disclosures and with submitting candidacy, that kind of thing. If that's something we could include in some way, that would be helpful.
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Sandboe. That's more of an administrative, and we've already put areas in it so it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Okay. With that, can I have a councillor make the following motion, please? Councillor Randawa.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the committee direct administration to draft a new election bylaw that integrate requirement from Bill 20, including the option to make a criminal record check mandatory for all election candidates for council review in December 2024.
Great, thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Worzanowski.
Thank you, Mayor Dean. I'll save my comment for after the vote. I just want to make a comment after we've done voting. Is that okay?
Not really.
Okay, my only comment is, because we want to get the list in, would it be acceptable for council to email you any other changes that are missed during this conversation, such that you have that in place before we do first reading?
And remember, we all get to make changes at first reading.
Yes,
Okay.
I understand, but
Yeah.
we're also it's November 26th,
Yep.
and that doesn't give us so much time. So I'd like to get as much information ahead of time, such that we can get 3 readings done by the end of the year.
Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you, Worship. And maybe I'm just reading, too much into the wordings here, but it says including the option to, and then it's followed by mandatory fall election. So it's a bit contradictory for me.
So would you like to take out the word including making? Basically take out the words the option.
Yes.
And then take out the word to, including making. Council, does anybody have a concern with the wording? Councillor Randall, yes.
We could remove the word making. It's including criminal.
Oh. Okay, thank you. Is that what you're looking for, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah,
Councillor Randall, can you restate the motion, please?
Sure, I can. I move that the committee direct administration to draft a new election bylaw that integrate requirement from Bill 20, including criminal record check, mandatory for all election candidate for council review in December 2024.
Great, thank you. Any further comments, questions with regards to the motion? Great, thank you. Call for the vote. Great, and that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 5.2, update for safety measures for intersection at Westchester Drive and Marina Drive, and this is being presented by Mr. Mike Fluker.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm bringing to you an update for information purposes on the current status of the intersection at Chestermere Drive and Marina Drive. So as you are aware, on the November 19th regular meeting of council, discussion focused on the potential conversion of the intersection of Marina Drive and West Chestermere Drive from a two-way stop to a four-way stop. Following much discussion and deliberation, administration made the decision to defer the installation of the four-way stop signs pending the outcome of a proposed traffic study for the entire area, which is subject to the expenditure subject to approval in the 2025 budget. So that study will come sometime next year. So in the interim, the issue of safety at the intersection has been addressed to the best of our ability. And what we have done with that intersection is this. We are in the process of expanding the no parking areas on both sides of the intersection to create a greater visibility. There is parking particularly on the side of the street, both sides of the street actually, but more so on the condo side that tends to block the view of the intersection as you're coming south on Marina Drive. That should be completed later today, and we'll give the residents some time to move their vehicles. There's snow issues still that are causing some concern, but I expect by the end of the week that parking issue will be resolved. We've also extended the walk time at the intersection for the lights to 30 seconds to give more time for people to cross. And in conjunction with that, what we've done is we've coordinated that flashing light with the light crossing here at City Hall and the one further down by the Manor, so that when that button is pushed at the crosswalk, those lights start flashing here and further down. And quite simply, it notifies drivers that there is something happening in the area, even if it's not at this immediate crosswalk. Hopefully it reminds drivers that they should be more aware and slow down. And it's not unlike driving through the Crow's Nest Pass where you see the animal flashing light signs. It might be for a distance of 4 or 5 miles there, but you become a little more aware of what's on the road. So the same principle applies here. We've also engaged our community peace officers to do traffic enforcement. As time permits, they've already been on the job there. No tickets have been issued so far. I spoke with Sergeant Kursik this morning, and he said that the highest speed that they've recorded so far is 45 kilometers per hour in a 40 zone, so that's not significant. They will pay continued attention to the intersection, and I'll provide further statistics as that unfolds. So we're also installing, and it should be later today, we have traffic counters that we're going to put up there, and we're going to do our own study. The traffic counters do a couple of things. It will give us the speed of vehicles in both directions. Excuse me. It'll give us the volume of traffic that goes through there and the time of day that we achieve those volumes. So we'll know when it's heaviest, when it's lightest. Those kinds of things can help us make some decisions as we go forward. To get a real decent picture of it, we need to run that for probably up 2 weeks would give us a pretty good idea. And when I have that information, I will bring it back to council and share it with you. That's everything I have for you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for taking some immediate steps. I know that this was a concern that has had a lot of attention paid to it by multiple residents in the area, and so I'm glad to see that we've taken some immediate steps. I would also ask that these steps be outlined, if we can, through our interim CAO, if we could, or acting CAO, sorry, with our acting CAO, if we could have those outlined from our comms team. Later today, as this has had a lot of attention to it from residents. So I think it would be good to have some information put out on this.
Absolutely. We'll get that out today.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Schindler.
I have a question through the chair to Mr. Fluker. We're removing some parking on the corner. Is there anywhere we can direct those people to park in lieu of those spots? A little background: when I was speaking to people in that area during the campaign, they did express that they lost some parking on the other side of the road by the Safeway, and they are ending up parking blocks away and from their house, and so they were concerned and they wanted to have that space back, but I'm not sure that we can. So I think taking away some more might create some more tension. So I just wanted to add some clarity.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Schindler. Unfortunately, we don't have an alternative for parking. I have looked at that, and I'm conscious of the impact that will have. And it becomes a question of weighing safety against convenience of parking. And much of that parking would be by residents of the condos across the street, all of which would have parking inside the condo complex. I realize that some people have more than one or two vehicles, and this creates a hardship. And I don't have an easy solution for that. I think in the interest of safety, we have to expand these no parking zones. And yes, it will inconvenience some people, and I know we will get calls.
Councillor Warzanowski.
Thank you, Mayor Dean. And if I could just jump in as a resident, I normally parked exactly where you're taking parking away. And through everybody on the panel, including administration, you, Mr. Fluker, I don't think it's an issue to find parking. There's plenty. Yes, maybe it may not be ideal, but there's always parking available across the street or down the street or around the corner. So I'm glad to see that for safety measures, you've taken the parking away, and I hope that residents just get used to parking somewhere else and understanding that we're doing our best to keep the flow of traffic strong as well as protect our pedestrians. So thank you for that.
Councillor
Thank you
Randall.
for your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Interim CEO Sandy Jalwat, to Mike Fluker to represent it. Thank you so much for representing. I just actually coming to the City Hall today morning. Just one resident I met, it's walking the pet. And they actually shown the concern. This is we are solving to move pit parking away, and especially now the snow, we can see it's hard for them even turn to the left. It's very hard, and they said it's when we did it before, it is normally it was at the end, and then this turning so many vehicle park is went into the accident and broken, but that one prevent from previously. And the other, maybe the public, we know we are increasing in our city. The further down towards the townhouses, there he just raised the concern there's normally park too close when they're coming out from a safe way to Lakeshore Manor and side. If we can move maybe 1 or 2 vehicle from that corner as well for the safety concern, I think that'd be great as well. This is a good idea and good practice. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the insight and the comments. And in fact, we are looking at that on both sides of the street. There's no point in taking half a measure. We need to do this properly. And in fact, all of that will be looked at. And that no parking zone expanded on both sides of the street for safety reason. And I think it's also worth mentioning, from the condo complex, there is another access egress further down towards Lakeshore Manor. And that's a straight road where that occurs, and the sight lines are much, much better. And perhaps in our messaging, we can encourage people to use that intersection as opposed to this one that is certainly more difficult.
Councillor Sandboe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. And my comments through you, through the acting CEO and through to Mr. Fluker. Just thank you for taking a very pragmatic approach to this. I know there's no good answer. I wanted to add extra voice to the parking issue. I personally spend time in that complex. I have several friends who reside in that complex, and parking is a massive issue. I know we're also looking to take some additional steps with transportation studies, traffic studies, and a larger community-wide look at this. It is worth keeping in mind that the city has created a problem for these residents, where we've made a community where you need to have vehicles, and a community that is expensive to live in, and you frequently have multiple generations or families with young children who don't have a parking space outside their front door, which is it's a safety concern, especially in the winter. So thank you very much for considering that. And I know that there's likely not an option that makes everyone happy, but it's worth keeping in mind.
Okay. With that, I would also say I'm also curious about the timing. So you had mentioned the traffic counters, and so I'm also thankful that we have both our city ops and our CGI departments both communicating and working on this. And so I know that the gentleman who had done the original study that talked about either looking at going back to the four-way stop and or adding other safety measures is coming later in December, and so there could be some good timing with that, as we may have some more up-to-date information coming at that time. So that timing, I think, will be very good. So again, thank you for that work. Can I have the motion to accept for information, please? Great, thank you. Can I have a Councillor Randawa?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the committee accept the verbal update from Mike Fluker, Director of Community Operation, regarding the intersection of Marina Drive and West Chester Meer Drive safety update for information.
Great, thank you. Any comments, questions with regards to the motion? Call for the vote. Great, thank you. Moving on now to our standing items. One will be our school sites, and I believe this is being presented by Kate. And so one of the things that we wanted to do today is make sure that we bring, we're wanting to always bring the most up-to-date information that we have. And on our school sites, information can sometimes change once a week, and then sometimes it can change daily. So this is why we do these as a verbal update, because of how quickly information can change with regards to these. So Kate, with our most up-to-date school site information that we have currently, as of 9:40 this morning.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Catherine Doherty. I'm the Manager of Infrastructure here at the City of Chestermere, and I'm going to give the school board verbal update today in lieu of Elizabeth Armitage, our Interim Director of CGI. So the two sites I will provide an update on today are the Dawson Landing K-9 school, as well as the high school site. So starting with Dawson Landing K-9, I don't know, best practice-wise, if I can just share the information I have with you about Dawson's Landing. If there's any questions, I'll address those questions at that time, and then we can move on to the high school site if that works.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, wonderful. So I just have some speaking points here. For the Dawson Landing K-9 site, I think it's important to understand that the title for this site was transferred to the Rocky View School Board in July of 2023. The geotechnical work for the school site has been completed as planned, which is completed through Alberta Infrastructure with Rocky View Schools. The final grading on the site has been delayed due to the weather conditions of the year, but the developer has started rough grading on the school site, but it will require some adjustments for the removal of the topsoil. The play field that is adjacent to the high school site is on a separate timeline, but it will be completed later in the 2025 construction season, but it will not impact the school site's readiness for construction. In response to the weather delay, the province has requested that the rough grading be completed and the topsoil removal and seeding be postponed until spring so that they can have their survey crews complete the work on the site as planned. We are awaiting confirmation from the developer of when this rough grading will be completed so that the site survey can commence. Once this timeline is provided, RVS will coordinate with the province on the completion of this work. And administration is always actively working with our school board. So our planning team anticipates that our next step will be a pre-application meeting with the province's proponents so we can make it a priority moving forward, which is the next step prior to construction on this site occurring.
Awesome. Any questions with regards to the K-9 site? Councillor Warzanowski.
Thank you, Mayor Dean. And through the chair, administration to you, Ms. Doherty. You'd mentioned that their surveyors are going to come back next year to review the grading after it's complete. Do they do that before or after the land is handed over, or is that's just kind of a standard practice for them, regardless if the land is ready to be handed over to? This one's actually moving forward, so yeah, ignore my question. Sorry. Yeah. If this was high school, I'd have a separate question. Thank you.
Yeah, land title's done.
Got it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
All right. Moving over to the high school site. So as of very recently, the MSR dedication agreement has been executed fully. So what that means is that the landowner for the high school site has signed the agreement with the city so that we will be receiving that dedication. The subdivision endorsement is expected shortly, which will be provided to the survey company who undertook the survey for that, which is a requirement for the submission to land titles to raise the title for that parcel so it can then be transferred to Rocky View Schools. In conjunction with that, now that we have the final sign-off from the landowners, the city has initiated the 30-day internal and external circulation, which is a requirement when we do a subdivision within the city. And we expect that to end before the year end. One of the requirements under the MGA is that there is a requirement to notify adjacent landowners when a subdivision occurs if that land does not fall under an approved ASP. This land does fall under approved ASP, but we're operating in a bit of a gray zone as to whether that notification is required, because originally under the ASP, the recreation site was on one side and the high school site was on the other, and they ran north-south. We've reconfigured the sites to run east-west. However, the land use has not changed. They were always intended to be public space. So we have inquired to legal to get an opinion on whether or not that notification is required. I want to be clear that this will not impact the overall timeline. It's more of an administration exercise, whether we should do this or not. And the simple answer would be, well, we should over-notify. We should go ahead with that. The trick is that there's a Canada Post strike, and we typically do the notification through registered mail. So that's not an option right now. We know when we have submitted other notifications to Canada Post, it's just sitting there indefinitely, which is of no value to anybody. So we have explored using a courier service with a signature requirement, which we feel is the equivalent of reasonableness. Should we ever need to explain why we chose that route, it's what other municipalities are doing. We've spoken with City of Airdrie and others to confirm that that's kind of what municipalities are doing in this moment. Obviously, it's significantly more expensive than Canada Post, which isn't a hindrance of us doing it or not, but we would like to know that answer. So we're hoping to get that opinion here in the next day or so, and then we can move accordingly forward. If we need to notify, we most definitely will. But if we don't need to, which when I read it is how I interpret it, but I am not a lawyer, so I want that warm hug from them. So regardless of that, we are on track that everything should be able to be submitted to land titles in early New Year, so January 2025, for registration, which would then allow us to raise the title, transfer it to Rocky View Schools. In conjunction with that, part of the requirements on the city for any school site is site readiness. Part of the site readiness for this specific site is a requirement for an 800-meter portion of road to be constructed to complete Merganser Drive West, which is on the north portion of this high school site, as well as approximately a 200-meter sanitary line to be brought up from, I don't know that road name, West Lakeview Drive?
West Lakeview Drive, yeah.
Thank you. West Lakeview Drive, north along the western boundary, of the parcel. So both of those items are in our proposed 2025 capital budget. They are being funded through reserve surplus, but it's subject to approval. So the council will see that for approval when we go through the budget. And in conjunction with that, we are talking to Rocky View Schools that once we have that approved budget, although that road will not be constructed on that day, like on January 1st, 2025, it is our full intention to make this a priority, and we are actively working on how we will complete that work in a timely manner. But we are also going to be writing a letter of support, a letter of intent is the right term, to submit to Rocky View School that they can then pair with their application to get funding. I think that I was under the impression that it was an annual requirement that you had to go through pre-planning, and then you had to go through design, and you had to go through construction, and it would take effectively 3 years. But we've been informed that often if a municipality offers a letter of intent, that Rocky View Schools or any school board has a stronger stance to the province to say, provide funding for multiple stages. So we are working with Rocky View Schools to ensure that that happens. And aside from that, council will continue to be kept up to date with any key milestones.
Also, too, within all of this, none of what you just said, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, none of what you just said could have happened if we had not acquired the land such as council did in August, correct? Absolutely. Right, so none of that could have happened. Right, so again, a giant, massive step forward by us acquiring the land so that all of these things could happen, so that it then triggered all of this work to be able to happen. Any, sorry, I apologize.
One point I want to add as well, and it's not my wheelhouse, so if you'd like to ask questions, I will try. But I do know that Kathy Russell, who's leading our recreation studies for the rec center, has written an expression of interest letter that will go through our CAO Kent as well as the mayor, looking about exploring the joint use facility. So that is in motion as well. There is a project charter on the timeline of what that would look like. Rocky View Schools, from my understanding, seems interested in exploring that timeline. That is all I know.
And this letter came out of the meeting that we had a council-to-council meeting. So City of Chesterfield Council met with Rocky View School trustees During the course of that conversation, it was indicated that they would like us to look at a letter of intent, so that then supports the work that the Recreation Task Force is doing with regards to, we can at least entertain then the conversation of either a joint use building or a joint use site with regards to recreation in the high school. So all it does is it gets us dating, so to speak, so that we can start that process moving forward. So again, all of these things are just triggers basically to make everything else happen.
And a key component I want to add to that is when I spoke to requiring a 200-meter sanitary line to run from the northern portion of the rec lands up to the school site, that is a fully requirement if there is a joint use facility. If we happen to go through a process where the high school site and a rec facility are going to be completely separate, there are less expensive options to run a sanitary line to the high school site. However, just based on how the budgeting process works, we put in for what we would need to make sure that happens, so we don't kill that dream. And then should there be a cheaper alternative, we'll go with that if that's no longer an option. But if we didn't include the 200-meter sanitary line, it would actually exclude us on a utilities base, which I understand no one really thinks about what's under the ground, but it does really impact our ability to build that building. So we're putting that buffer in there to ensure that we have budget to do what's required to support a joint use facility. Should it not come to fruition for whatever reason, administration will change that and do a significantly cheaper or less expensive, still up to code option to service the high school site and its exclusivity. Just want to make sure that's clear.
Right. And of course, the flip side of that, though, is that if we don't do it, any other funding that we may want to try and do for a joint use facility or site would then also be off the table. Welcome to the fun. Right? Okay, great. Any questions then with regards to the high school site? Councillor Sandboe.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question's through you. So I'm hearing that there's this 800-meter road and the sanitary line, and that's in the 2025 budget. What I'm wondering is if council were to preemptively approve that line item, if that would either further support the letter of intent or allow administration to get started on an RFP process or in some other way move that forward.
Potentially, it could. We're currently exploring how we want to procure this specific project. We have a few different options with respect to either working with the developers on the site for them to handle it and the city to look through or to reimburse through our reserve surplus. So at the end of the day, it's November and there's a lot of snow. And it's almost Christmas. So as far as our intention is not to put an RFP out for this immediately because we really would like to explore how to work with our development partners in the area. The reality is for those two sites, the same engineering firm did the engineering work on Dawson's and Chelsea. So logically, it would make sense for that same firm to design the 800-meter road that connects them. So there's some stuff on the back end. We are actively working on this, regardless of this being improved or not at the moment, because we know the timeline's there. So my short answer is no. It would not expedite anything significantly.
Councillor Sandboe.
Thank you. So it wouldn't expedite anything. I want to make sure that we take every possible step to ensure that we receive funding. Do you think it would help with the letter of intent if we made a formal resolution to that effect?
I do not want to speak to Kent's comfort level on that, but I believe that letter could equally also come from the mayor and have your sign with Kent on it. So that is your personal,
correct,
professional standing on what the city's comfortable doing. I will happily draft that letter and have it ready for that because I agree it's a huge priority for our city. It's just important to understand that until we get that funding, there is a bit of unknown, but I think the council knows very well what will be approved in that budget, more so than I will speak to. So I think we would be comfortable putting that forward, but it's not my name.
we are also 2 weeks away from approving all of those things, right? Like when we talk, right? Like what I can't believe is like December is slamming into us here pretty quick, and so that's going to be coming fairly. It's going to be coming very quickly, and so what's exciting is that there's a lot of work that's happening with this, and I would also hope that similar to what we did with the safety concerns within the next day or so, that we also put out a bullet point description of what is happening with these school sites through our comms department, because we've seen that at times there's been a differentiation in information that's been put out, and so I would love it if we could just even do a bullet point. Here's what's happening with the Dawson K-9, here's what's happening with the high school, and the steps that are being taken. Councillor Warzanowski.
Thank you, Mayor Dean, and everybody who's contributed to this conversation through the chair administration, to you, Ms. Doherty. Actually, probably to our interim CAO. One, I know that in recent months we've been definitely pressuring or suggesting to administration to look at every angle for any type of funding. As we move forward with Rocky View here, I'd also just like to highlight the funding availability potentially from any source, foreign or domestic, in regards to helping us co-fund not only the school, the rec center, or anything around it. We'd certainly appreciate that. I know it is in the budget to potentially look at a grant writer or things of that nature, but this is one where we're going to need some extra cash to get kind of what the residents want. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Through Mayor to Council, I assure you that we're taking a very aggressive approach in ensuring that we undertake all measures to evaluate every grant option possible out there.
Excellent. Yeah, there's a big dollar amount here, and maybe we can think out of the box. And we've heard of other municipalities even going to Ottawa unannounced sometimes and being successful in raising money for specific recreational projects. So let's not only think of what's available out there on black and white, but think out of the box, because this is going to be a big bill for our city, but it's long overdue for our residents. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, with that, I believe that we are going to call for... I also want to say thank you to administration with how quickly things have done. So it is absolutely correct. The MSR was executed very recently, and Ms. Russell very recently produced this letter that's getting ready to go to the CAO to be able to go to Rockview School. So thank you, admin, for your continued efforts on this. There's a lot that's happening to push this forward. So with that, I would like to call for the motion, please. Councillor Schindler.
I move that the Governance and Priorities Committee accept the school sites update for information.
Great, thank you. Comments, questions with regards to the motion? Call for the vote. And that's carried. Great. Thank you. A recreation update. For me, I just want to highlight the piece that we just talked about with regards to that letter of interest in looking at, again, it's not marrying or committing us to an idea. It's not committing us to that idea, but it is certainly opening up that door of possibility, and then we go from there would be with regards to that. I would look to the three councillors that are on our rec task force, Councillor Grant, Deputy Mayor Ryan, or Councillor Sandboe. Is there anything from your standpoint with regards to a recreation update? Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. No, there is not. Our next, we've broken into our subcommittees, and we have set those meeting dates, but they are for Thursday for the first one. So we don't have more of an update at this moment, but we will have one next meeting.
Great, thank you. So then their next update would come to the December 10th GAP meeting. Great, thank you. Okay, with that, it was only a little bit of information, but following proper procedure, can I have a councillor make the Councillor Grant?
I move the Governance Priority Committee accept their recreation update for information.
Great, thank you. Comments, questions? Call for the vote. Great, thank you. And we have two committee updates. First of all, update from the Chestnut Chamber of Commerce. Councillor Warzanowski, is there anything that you would like to highlight from the Chamber of Commerce?
Thank you, Mayor Dean. I can give you a little bit of feedback. There have been a couple of events which I did bring forward to the last GAP meeting, but it's here. There's the feedback in black and white from the Chamber. There was an awards kind of week, business week, that was actually quite well subscribed, although they didn't get any cost recovery on it. Often they're not really that picky on collecting, and I think a lot of the members who are members don't typically pay for these events, but they did have it in their budget to pay for the small business event. The City of Chestermere also contributed in providing some expenses in regards to some of the awards and the like. And I know that the City of Chestermere generally is quite supportive of the Chamber when Chamber asks. So I wanted to give that feedback through the chair, through our administration, and a thank you on behalf of the Chamber. The Chamber did formally ask, which we've forwarded through email to our interim and our CAO in regards to getting information for new businesses. And I know that the administration is looking at trying to get that information back to the Chamber so the Chamber can look at getting more business subscriptions to the Chamber of Commerce. But the meeting was short. More speaking about what kind of events are coming up, potentially having a market event here in December. That's still kind of early stages, even though we're closing in here on the remaining part of the year. And then looking forward to doing some more planning kind of next year. I'd like to, ask if anybody in council wants to ask any feedback, if they have any feedback in regards to the Chamber, because I know it's this council's agenda to get them more involved in the business side within the City of Chestermere. So that's pretty much it. The meeting went well, but I'll open it to the floor if there's any questions. Otherwise, that's my update.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Randawa?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have just one question. Like the report mentioned, the cost was $1,400 for the event, and they receive only $285 in revenue. And how the Chamber is planning to address the financial sustainability for the future cost?
Councillor Warzanowski?
I haven't seen their thank you, Mayor Dean, and to Councillor Rundau. I haven't seen their financials. It does sound like they do have the expenses to afford a lot of this, and the Chamber does get funding elsewhere other than just events. So when they have these events, they don't ask the members to pay. It's non-members who do pay, and both Councillor Grant and I were at that event, and there was a lot more than $280 of people there than there was, there was a lot more than $283 of people there, kind of showing that it was a well-attended event, even though it wasn't paid for. So I think they have the money is the short answer. I haven't seen their financials. When I do, I'm sure the Chamber will present it, and we'll present it to Council for information as part of the minutes, because those will be in future minutes whenever we go over their annual financial statements.
Okay, thank you so much. And how they collaborating with the local other businesses, the new opening businesses, how they collaborate with them?
So, Councillor Randawa, they are trying their best to find out who those new businesses are, but it hasn't been easy because in former years, the Chamber was receiving information from the city in regards to who was signing up as a new business, regardless of what that new business was. And on behalf of the Chamber, I have sent emails and requests to the city to see if we can get that started again. Even when when Mayor Dean was a councillor, Dean, he was the chair of that. You weren't even a councillor even before that?
No, because that'd be a conflict of interest.
He was a former chair of that board of the chamber board, and we were getting that information.
That's
so
correct.
we just simply asked to get that information again so they could solicit those interested to be contacted by the chamber.
The reason I just want to add the comment, during my campaign, the Sorrel Bakery owner, she actually struggled quite a bit to collaborate with the chamber. So she said it took them for months and months to, she was sending emails and no reply from the chamber and stuff.
Yeah, so I think, what I would suggest is the city's stance is we want to be as supportive as we can as to what's happening with the chamber, and then individual, if we hear individual concerns from residents with regards to, or business owners, then we should direct those to the chamber and not necessarily in open forum do that, as opposed to if you're hearing a concern from a business, just forward it to the chamber, and then I'm sure that the chamber will be able to handle that. Or also feel free through, now that we have councillors sitting on multiple committees, feel free to share it with, if there's a concern with the committee, to share it with the councillors who sit on that committee, and then they can bring that back to those guys. Councillor Sandboe, I think I saw a hand.
I think my question was answered.
Okay.
Thank you, Worship.
Great, thank you. So with that, I believe we will accept the chamber update for information. Were we grouping these together, or were they separate? They were separate. Okay, so we're going to call for the motion to accept the update about the chamber for information, please. Am I the only one with the Jeopardy theme song in my head right now? No, okay, just checking. I definitely had Jeopardy in my head. Okay, can I have a councillor make the following motion, please? Councillor Randawa.
I move that the Governments and Priority Committee accept the Chestermere Chamber of Commerce update for information.
Comments, questions? Call for the vote. Great, thank you. And with that, then we have the Grant Adjudication Committee meeting update. Councillor Sandboe, Councillor Grant, anything that you would like to highlight from there? Councillor Sandboe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We've had one additional very short meeting. Some updates from that. Administration has been looking for information on how other communities grant out and their methodologies and ideologies, how they navigate FCSS. There's many different ways to run an FCSS program, and that's, of course, just one piece of our granting program at the City of Chestermere. They've also put out a survey just for the committee to gather some feedback on what the committee is finding is working and not working. And all this information will come together and provide extra support for the work that the task force is doing. So all of that should be coming together in the next several weeks or a couple of months.
Great, thank you. Councillor Grant, anything to add?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I was actually double booked last meeting and wasn't able to attend, so I appreciate Councillor Sandboe's update.
Great, thank you. Any questions for either Councillor Worzanowski?
Thank you, Mayor Dean. And my question is to our members of the Grant Adjudication Committee, Councillor Sandboe and Councillor Grant. Do you know how often they meet in regards to, and how often they actually give money to the not-for-profits for the grant adjudication, or is it simply annually?
Councillor Grant?
Thank you. I'll start, I suppose. So it used to be annually, and I don't know if last year was an anomaly because of all the turmoil we had, but we did do a second call last year. I don't know if that's the standard we're going to be moving forward. We haven't really discussed that. I have heard some indications that we are going to do the two applications again,
But I don't think as a committee we have decided that 100%, and we should probably make sure that we are doing that.
It's also been standard practice that the committee meets or does things on an as-needed basis as well. So if an extra funds become available, or if there's a possibility to do other things, it is certainly within the purview under both the terms of reference and all legislative procedures that if council, for example, if council were to approve X number of dollars again, there could essentially either be a third call and or that money, the grant adjudication committee could even make a decision to award somebody who had applied previously and had been denied. So those are all within the purviews of the grant adjudication committee mandate. Councillor Worzanowski?
Thank you, Mayor Dean. While I understand your comment about them doing it as needed, I would suggest that better planning and more regular review would be more effective than on an ad hoc basis. While you have to enable ad hoc because things do change ad hoc, if there is some more formality, then at least the people asking for funding would understand when and how to apply, because that'll be spelled out in the, to Councillor Grant's commentary. At least the committee will know what the kind of guidelines are and when things are going to be handed out, whether it's ad hoc or not, because you suggested maybe it's one time a year, maybe not. We should definitely clarify that. I would suggest adding some clarification for our residents so they know how to get the cash.
I apologize, Councillor Wozzanowski. I led you down a garden path inadvertently. It is very well laid out. The dates are well laid out, when the applications come in, when the deadlines are, when things happen. There was a bit of a, what happened with previous council was that there was some turmoil that happened that Councillor Grant was more than polite about mentioning, and that's why that happened. It is a very well laid out process. What I am suggesting, and I apologize for not making this clear, is that if council, so this would be a council decision, if council, for example, was to see a surplus in a budget and decided that it wanted to give more money, council should not just do that. We would kick it back to the committee. So the committee, in my opinion, as someone who's been on both sides of it, both as someone applying for funding and on the council side of things, the committee has never worked, in my 10 years of being in Chestermere, the committee has never worked at an ad hoc, nor was I suggesting that it work in an ad hoc. What I was suggesting is that we would always follow the process, and the process for us currently, now if we want to change this, we would change this later. The process for us granting money to not-for-profits is done through our grant adjudication committee. Should council make money more available, we would kick it back to that committee, and that committee would do that. That's what I'm suggesting.
Thank you, Mayor Dean. If I could just make one comment. That's great, and I would support always kicking back money to the grant adjudication committee, only to make the suggestion that if there is a surplus, there are other funding requirements that the city or not-for-profits or adjudication committee also requires. So maybe it's a bit informal, but we should have an understanding as when surpluses do arise, what are the hot items that our residents are looking for in regards to potential surplus funding, and how the monies would be spent by direction of city council to administration. Because the grant adjudication committee, it'd be great to support them, but there are other funding requirements that the city will need. So I just want to make that comment. It's not just about the grant adjudication committee.
Great, thank you. Councillor Randawa?
I have just a question. Majority is answered. How does this committee ensure the grant funding is distributed equitably across diverse group and organizations?
Councillor Sandboe?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm newer to the committee, but I can attempt to answer that. There are several documents, probably too many, in my opinion. There's a lot of information out there on how this is done. So there's a social framework that the city put out several years ago, and that talks about how decisions are made. There is a priority for what we would now be calling social connections, and some means of diversity. I think one of the things that both the task force and the committee would like to look at is how to make that more clear, to more clearly articulate exactly how money is distributed, because that is feedback that's come back from the community. But I can tell you from the meetings that I've been a part of, that's very much on everybody's mind, who's on that committee, is how do we make this equitable? How do we get the most bang for the city's buck for the residents of Chestermere? I've only seen a lot of integrity from the staff members and from that committee when making decisions.
And my another question is, normally we get the minutes. Why we don't get the minutes in detail? Is majority time these is in camera session and stuff. So I would like to see the minutes in the future as well for this committee.
Sorry, I'm confused, Councillor Randawa. So the meeting minutes are attached in this agenda package. But we don't get the in-camera. Because that's the committee.
That's what. So the board meeting is in camera.
Councillor Grant and then Councillor Sandboe.
Thank you. Just for clarification, yes, Councillor Randawa, most of the meeting, when we do talk about the summary and our decisions, is in camera, and that is to mostly protect the members of the board. Obviously we do in camera here to protect confidential reasons and stuff like that. So, I'm trying to figure out what I should say here. You are right. There is not much information outside of that would be interesting to people, as like the meat of the discussion is in the in-camera, but there are no motions passed within that in camera, and we only pass the motions outside of camera. And I know that doesn't provide a lot of detail on how we got to that decision, but that's kind of how these boards are set up to operate.
And to be fair, not just the boards, but council as well. If we had competing offers on an item that administration was bringing to council, we wouldn't have a open discussion where we're discussing those 2, 3, 4, 5 businesses. Right? We would also do that in camera for the integrity of the organizations, for the integrity of the city, for the integrity of the companies, all of those sorts of things. It would be a very similar process at council if we were reviewing contracts and administration wanted our input on certain contracts. That would also be done in camera.
No, I get that that confidential information. We don't need to bring it, but there's only a talk only in camera. There's no other talk at all in the committee. That's my concern.
Oh, I see. Councillor Sandboe?
Thank you, Your Worship. You'll actually find for the meetings where these decisions aren't being made, it's not in camera. There's no in-camera sessions. So one we had this week, there was no in-camera sessions. And I'm definitely hearing what you're saying, Councillor Randawa, about how it could be frustrating for somebody not being able to see how these decisions are being made, especially when it might be applicants and that kind of thing. I will say that the role of the committee in camera is to thoroughly pick apart these applications. And from an outside perspective, without context, it could be seen as mean almost, right? Because you're looking for flaws. You're verifying that everything that's said is accurate. It's really good due diligence to make sure that the money is being spent properly. And I would be concerned about putting that fully in the public. But what administration do is they summarize that feedback constructively and send it to the applicant themselves. So that's a way to get it out of the in-camera and get it constructively into that area. I would be really interested to talk more about that concept about how to get more into the public instead of in camera. But I also want to be really cautious that, our not-for-profits are quite precious. They're dear to us, and I wouldn't want to accidentally put out any impression about a comment that's made or something that would change someone's perspective over not-for-profits.
I would also suggest too that if one were to review our minutes of our council meetings, one may have the same stance, right? Our committee bylaw dictates and demonstrates that minutes for our committees are supposed to basically be similar to what we do for a council meeting. If somebody wants to go back and watch our marathon meetings, then they can and see that wholesome discussion. All of our committees are also up public, so you can attend, and if it's not, if it is not in camera, right? But you cannot participate, you can't say anything, you can't share opinion, right? Similar to what's happening right now. We have people that are sitting in our gallery right now. They don't have opportunity to participate in the discussion. They don't have opportunity to say anything. They don't have opportunity to object. They're simply here observing, and so it would be the same. And so our committee bylaw actually says that the way that that the minutes for the committees are to be done basically similar to how we do the minutes for a council meeting. So it's basically you record the resolution and how it went. Councillor Grant and then Councillor Warzanowski.
Thank you, Mayor. And to Councillor Randawa, I completely share your frustration with in camera. I am Mr. Anti in camera, except for when we really have to be. And I do find that discussion really should be in camera. There's a lot of great programming here. There's never enough money for everybody, and you're literally talking about great programming and who's more deserving. And it's not easy, and it's not fun. It's really not fun. But a decision has to be made, and in there, somebody gets the grant and somebody doesn't. But the metrics we use to get there in that discussion are sometimes maybe opinion as well. And, you know, you got to be careful about besmirching or disparaging these great not-for-profits when you're just trying to find a reason to pick one program or the other. So I agree. It's not easy, not perfect, but I think we're doing a pretty decent job. We can probably communicate a little bit better about what our requirements are so everybody understands, and it's more of a maybe even playing field because everybody has the right information to be successful writing a grant. But yeah, it's just there's no win. So
it's also to your point, Councillor Grant, I also think, and I know that I experienced this, I'm not sure if our new councillors have experienced this, you can feel a certain way about it in camera and then suddenly you're an elected official and you're like, oh, that's why we do it, right? There's like this new understanding that you come to as an elected official, I think, when you sit on this side of the desk. I am also pretty anti in camera, however, have certainly grown to appreciate the need and the reason for in camera. So I will not take your title away from you about being Mr. Anti in camera, but I will, that title's all yours. However, I will say that having sat on this side of the desk now for a little while, I have a different appreciation as to the reason for in camera. I'm also thankful that this council has demonstrated that we try to avoid it as much as we possibly can. Councillor Warzanowski.
Thank you, Mayor Dean, and everyone up here on council discussing the respect for in-camera and confidentiality. I share the same respect. And I know Councillor Sandboe had suggested that we're providing feedback back to the residents who don't get the money. And I think we all can appreciate that we can't be all things to all people, and we do our best, whether it's in camera or out of camera. The feedback is contrary to what I'm hearing from residents, in that they're not getting feedback on why they're not getting the money, and that's where the frustration lies. So in that, whether we do that confidentiality for the applying group or not can be managed through confidence or no confidence, and I would just suggest that we could be doing a better job in getting back to the not-for-profit groups asking for money and why they did or they didn't, such that they can be more successful in the future instead of questioning what the expectations of the grant adjudication committee is. That's just some feedback, and I'm just take it for what it is. I totally respect confidentiality, but our residents need to know why they're not getting the money.
Do you want me to go first? Or acting CAO, Ishel Hawat?
Sure, thank you. Through the chair to Mayor and Council, to Councillor Worzanowski, I just want to assure you that there is a very strong feedback mechanism that we follow. The Community Services Manager, Rubel Brar, goes through a very defined process where she defines the metrics involved in the feedback application, and as well the not-for-profits, or the organizations rather, that do apply are given ample opportunity to review the application and identify areas of weakness and strengthen their applications for future opportunities.
I would also caution too that at times, I know personally this can be a personal issue. Just because I don't like the answer doesn't make the answer not true. And so sometimes there can be concerns with feedback because we don't necessarily like the feedback. It doesn't make the feedback not true. And so I know that that's something even in my own reviews, right? And in any time I've had feedback or opportunity to grow or opportunity to have even a performance review done, if you will, there are times where I may disagree with something, but it doesn't make the feedback not true, so to speak. Deputy Mayor Narayan.
Thank you, through your worship. So I have previously served on this committee, and it's definitely a challenging task trying to do more with less. Something community members must be mindful of is the FCSS and the United funding. They come with their own framework and then matrix, which the committee then has to follow. So this is not something that the committee members come up with. The third source of funding, which is the city grant. Now, that's something if members of council are not happy with how those fundings are allocated, that's something I guess we can always review in council to see if we need to make changes to it to widen the net, if you will. But when it comes to FCSS and United funding, the directions are pretty clear as to what the requirements should be.
Yes, thank you. And also within that, just a reminder for everybody that through the Mayor's Task Force for Not-for-Profits, through the HSAB, the councillors that are meeting on both of those committees have planned to meet. We don't have a set date yet, but there is a plan for us all to sit down and have a conversation, and then through a gap meeting, working with administration, so working with our manager of community services to be able to then come back to council with some proposals with regards to grants. Those meetings just haven't happened yet. Part of that is also due to the fact that the task force is wanting to have one more meeting with the not-for-profits as a full update, and also the Grant Adjudication Committee, as Councillor Sandboe has outlined within her presentation today, highlighting the idea of the survey, getting feedback from that committee. And so the idea was to bring all of those councillors together, and so that would be Councillor Grant, Councillor Sandboe, Councillor Randawa, and myself coming together, working then with our manager of community services to bring back a comprehensive report for council to review. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to add about the feedback loop from the administration. And that feedback that is given is definitely subjective. And it's really a summary of the committee's comments and their opinions. So I understand that when getting that information back, you often not, speaking generally, that maybe that's not the truth in their eyes.
Sure.
But that was the truth as the committee saw it, as it was presented to them. And I think that's kind of how that feedback needs to be interpreted.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. With that, then, can I call? Councillor Randawa.
I just want to add the suggestion, the comment, like how when somebody is fairly new, they open the new non-profit as well, and it is, the city is growing, and I heard from the community there's more new non-profit is on the way and stuff. Sometimes they don't know how to apply grant, or they just put the minimum things. It's not, sometimes they don't do that much work. They do more work, but they need to kind of more workshop how to apply the grant or application to put more. I think for the grant adjudication committee need to look at those application. If fairly new organization, non-profit or any collective or anybody coming into the community, because there is some very strong, well-known into the community, but we need to give a fair chance to the new organization as well.
Great, thank you. I think that's where the conversation can come back to with community services, the 4 councillors, as I had mentioned, and make it a part of that to bring back for a review from council. With that then, can I call for the motion for information? Can I have a councillor make the following motion, please? Councillor Sandboe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the Governance and Priorities Committee accept the Grant Adjudication Committee update for information.
Great, thank you. Comments, questions? Call for the vote. Great. And with that, I believe we are on to our motion to adjourn the meeting. So I'm not sure who had 10:30 on the bingo card for for ending today's meeting, but Councillor Randawa, can I get you to make the motion for adjourning our meeting today?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the Governments and Priority Committee meeting adjourned at 10:30 a.m.
Great, thank you. Call for the vote. And we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Great work.